All right, let's get right into it. Today we're breaking down FAA Airworthiness Directive 2025-19-13. This is a really important one. It's a new mandate that requires replacing specific high-pressure turbine hubs on certain IAE V2500 series engines. Mark your calendars. The effective date for this directive is October 29, 2025. That date's coming up faster than you think, so now is absolutely the time to get your compliance planning in motion. So the big question on everyone's mind is, of course, is my fleet impacted? That's exactly what this explainer is for. We're going to walk you through all the specifics so you can figure out exactly what this means for your operations. We're going to cover 5 key areas. First, a quick overview of the directive. Then we'll explain the unsafe condition that started all this. After that, we'll get into the specific engines and parts you need to look for. Then we'll talk about the required actions, and finally, we'll sum up the cost and impact. Okay, first up, let's get a bird's-eye view of this directive, just to understand the scope of what we're dealing with. So what's the bottom line here? Well, this isn't a proposal or a suggestion. It's a final rule from the FAA. It's a mandate. And it all came about because the manufacturer's own investigation found an issue in their production process, which is now leading to this required action to remove and replace specific high-pressure turbine, or HPT hubs. So why is this happening? Let's dig into the unsafe condition that prompted this action. What exactly is the problem? The root cause is something the FAA calls a quality escape. During production, an angled ultrasonic inspection was done, but the criteria for rejecting a part were misinterpreted. What that means is a non-conforming and potentially defective part wasn't caught. It slipped through inspection and made it out into the supply chain. And the risk here is, well, it's severe. The FAA's filing puts it bluntly, saying that if this isn't addressed, it could lead to an uncontained hub failure and ultimately loss of the airplane. This AD is all about preventing that absolute worst-case scenario. You can see how this chain of events could play out. It all starts with that one inspection error at the factory. That lets a defective hub get into service, which then creates the risk of an uncontained failure and, the potential loss of the aircraft. Okay, this next part is absolutely critical. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of exactly which engines and which parts are affected by this AD. Take a good look at this list. The directive applies to these 10 specific models of the IAE V2500 engine series. If you operate any of these, you really need to pay close attention to what's coming next. And here it is. This table is basically your master list. Compliance comes down to matching the specific part number and the serial number of these HP hubs. So you'll need to check your engine records and your inventory against these 8 specific serial numbers. And also pay close attention to that removal cycle limit for each part. That's a critical piece of the puzzle. So that brings us to the big what next? What do you actually have to do, and by when do you have to do it? The compliance timeline is a little flexible. You need to remove the affected part either at the next engine shop visit or within 100 flight cycles of the affected date. The key phrase here is whichever occurs later. This gives you a window to align the work with your scheduled maintenance, as long as you don't exceed the part cycle limit, of course. Now, the FAA gets very specific about what they mean by an engine shop visit for this AD. It's only triggered when you separate those major engine flanges from maintenance. And crucially, it does not include separating flanges just for transport, or say, removing an engine for on-wing style maintenance in a shop. Getting that definition right is key to scheduling your compliance correctly. So, to boil it all down, there are 3 things you absolutely have to do. First, remove the affected parts from service based on that timeline. Second, replace them with a part that's eligible for installation. And third, and this is permanent, you are prohibited from installing any of these 8 specific hubs into any engine after October 29, 2025. All right, let's wrap this up by talking about the bottom line, the cost and the operational impact. What's this all going to look like from a management perspective? The FAA's initial estimate puts the total cost for U.S. operators at just under $1 million. But, and this is a big but, that figure is based on the 2 engines they currently know are affected in the U.S. registry. If more are identified, that number is obviously going to climb. And when you look at the cost breakdown for just one hub, you see the real story. The labor is estimated at about $8,500, but the part itself costs a whopping $460,000. The financial impact here is almost entirely driven by the cost of the hardware. So what's the final action item here? It's all about coordination. Your continuing airworthiness management organization, or CAMO, your maintenance crews, your planning teams, everyone needs to be on the same page to identify any affected assets and make sure you hit that compliance deadline.